It doesn't matter if you play in a 1 QB league, a 2 QB league, or a super flex league, you are exactly where you need to be. If you need any assistance picking your quarterbacks for the 2025 season, Headliner Nation and any new viewers, welcome into our newly formatted start and sit shows for this season. And I have to give a huge shout out to Headliner Nation. We greatly appreciate all the positive feedback that we have heard about the new start and sit shows for this season and the changes that we made. We were really excited to format these shows in a much clearer and concise way, and you all have loved them so far. But if you're a returning member of Headliner Nation and this is the first start and sit show that you've seen this year, or maybe you're a new viewer and you've never seen any of our start and sit shows, I'm gonna link our running back and wide receiver videos down below because those do a little bit better job of explaining what each individual section actually means. Today, I'll go ahead and still explain a little bit as we go, but I'm willing to bet the majority of the people that are watching this show right now have already watched wide receivers and or running backs and have a pretty good idea of what's going on. Segment number 1, must starts. These are going to be all of the guys that we are really playing no matter what. You drafted these guys for a reason, and there's just nothing about them this week that makes me overly concerned. And this part of the list is probably going to have a few names that we'll see over and over and over all season long. At the top of the list, Kyler Murray. We know with the rushing upside that he gives us a decent floor every single week. Don't turn the ball over, have a better connection with Marvin Harrison Jr., and he should be in for a fantastic season. Lamar Jackson, an MVP candidate, once again, will always be starting him. Same thing goes for the reigning MVP, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, will always be starting those guys. Dak Prescott, as of right now, he's a must start because they might throw the ball 50 times a game because the defense could be that bad this season. Going up against Philadelphia, this could definitely be a shootout. Bo Nix for Denver going up against Tennessee. Definitely love what they did on offense this year. A more balanced approach with the run game should only open things up for Bo Nix, especially if his wide receiver twos actually step up into that role. For Jared Goff, I'm not concerned with Jared Goff right now. Would he start a little bit slow? It's possible. None of the starters play in the preseason. You do have a new offensive coordinator, and they're doing some different things this year. While it's still a lot of the same concepts because Johnny Morton really taught Ben Johnson a lot of what he knows, it still takes time to adjust. And when you don't play in the preseason, it could lead to a slow start. But Jared Goff is still going to be a start for me this week, regardless of whether or not that slow start happens in Green Bay. Patrick Mahomes, if his offensive weapons can stay healthy this season, hopefully we get a guy that's a top 5 quarterback once again. Justin Herbert going up against Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes, this could definitely be a high-scoring affair. If it is, Justin Herbert will be slinging the ball. Jalen Hurts, we know he's going to get that tush-push going, and we know he's going to score some touchdowns on the ground. Going up against Dallas, he's going to have a ton of time to throw, probably going to have a really solid game this week. Baker Mayfield going up against Atlanta. He has plenty of weapons. Unfortunately, they are a little bit banged up right now among the wide receivers, but he still has a plethora of other options to use. Jaden Daniels will be in this start section every single week. At what point this year would we sit back and say to ourselves, we're not going to start Jaden Daniels? He was a top 3 quarterback for us heading into the season. And for the must-start section, I'm not going to go nearly in depth with all of those players as I once did because they're must-starts. It really doesn't matter what I say to you. You're probably playing them no matter what. Even in a super flex league, more than likely, you're going to be playing everybody that is in the must-start column. And if you have 3 quarterbacks in the must-start column and you're playing in a super flex league, or even if you have 2 and you're playing in a 1 QB league, we'll still have our rankings before Thursday Night Football to help you make that decision. For this section, we might have to tiptoe because we don't want to step on too many of these landmines. Now, the landmine section are guys that they could end up having a solid ceiling, but I'm not a fan of their floor, and there might be some concerns that just make me go, they're probably a little bit closer to being a bust this week than they are being a guy that we need to have in our fantasy lineup. And while I may have some concerns about these guys, there's still going to be quarterbacks in the landmine column that I will start regardless. Caleb Williams is my first landmine up this week, and I personally have him listed as a sit. For a majority of these guys that I have listed as sits, that means that if you were to play him on your fantasy team, more than likely you would be able to find better options elsewhere, whether it be a QB2 on your roster or maybe somebody on waivers. But for Caleb Williams, you probably have to play him this week. Why? Because you may have drafted him as your only quarterback, hoping that he would take a major step forward. But I don't love the Minnesota matchup to begin the season. This is a defense that did some work on their team, especially defensively and up front, to be a whole lot stronger. And if they have trouble blocking the Minnesota line and Caleb Williams is running all over the place, it's going to lead to a low completion percentage and unfortunately potentially some picks as well. CJ Stroud shares some same concerns that I have for Caleb Williams this week. And it's another reason why, I think he could be a landmine. If you're playing him expecting a big game, unfortunately, I think he's teetering more towards hitting his floor than his ceiling. And for CJ Stroud, I've got him listed as a sit. Going up against the LA Rams, that front line of the Rams is going to get into the backfield, especially if this Houston front has not improved from last season. They made some moves on the front line and they're trying to get better, but there's no guarantee that this front line will be gelling right away, and CJ Stroud could definitely be hurt from that. On the other sideline, Matthew Stafford going up against Houston, I will go ahead and list him as a start this week. Now, he still is in the landmine section though because he has been banged up and because he is dealing with a back injury and has missed a decent amount of training camp. Houston's defense is no joke either, but I do like the established weapons for the LA Rams just a little bit more than I do Houston right now, and that's why I would have Matthew Stafford ranked ahead of CJ Stroud and why I would start him over Stroud as well. Justin Fields, yes, he has some decent upside because of his rushing ability. He is a guy that absolutely could score a touchdown on the ground. He could run for 60, 70, 80 yards, and that number alone could be enough to really prop him up really close to top 12 quarterback status, especially if he's just good in the passing game. Doesn't need to be great. He could just be good or even average with those numbers on the ground. Going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, though, TJ Watt's going to get after Justin Fields, and I think he's going to be moving around an awful lot. He's going to be very uncomfortable in the pocket. This is a new offensive scheme, and honestly, just with Garrett Wilson, he's got some connection there, but he doesn't have a ton of connection with everybody else yet as of this point. Justin Fields could be a very sneaky candidate as a top 12 quarterback this season, but I don't think it will happen in week 1. Sam Darnold is another guy that I just need a little bit of time to see what he looks like to begin the season before I get overly excited about starting him. And this week going up against San Francisco's defense may not be as good as we've seen in the past, but I don't think it's horrible either. So for Sam Darnold, what are we going to be getting from him? It is a new offensive scheme with a new coaching staff. But the Seattle weapons are greatly different than what they used to be. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Noah Fant, they're all gone. AJ Barner looks to step up as the new tight end 1. Obviously, you have Jackson Smith and Jigba left, and you brought in Cooper Kupp to really become that wide receiver 2 behind JSN. But what does he have left in the tank? Again, lots of questions, and if you're starting Sam Darnold this week, that's why I consider him a landmine. I'm going to go ahead and list Brock Purdy as a start in the landmine section this week, but I wrestled with this one for quite a while, and it's not because I don't like Brock Purdy, and it's not because I don't respect him, or I'm sleeping on him, or whatever other saying you guys could come up with in the comments when you inevitably tell me how much I hate Brock Purdy, even though I just said I don't. Brock Purdy is in a wildly different space to begin 2025 than he was in 2024. Brandon Ayuk is injured. No telling on when he will be back. Juwan Jennings, well, he's missed a majority of camp with an injury and a contract dispute. Is he really ready to play football this week? You don't have Deebo Samuel anymore. Christian McCaffrey, yep, he's here. He's ready to go, but hopefully that health sticks. George Kittle seems ready to go, but your number 2 target might be Ricky Pearsall, who we still have. I mean, we don't have a huge sample size with Pearsall as of yet. And as excited as I am for Cam Ward, I can't start him in week 1. Not right now going up against Denver. Denver's defense is going to be really good this season, especially in the secondary. And while I do believe Cam Ward will also be good, your first NFL start against these guys, isn't exactly what I'm hoping for. Yeah, we're approaching the end of the calendar year, but that doesn't mean that we still don't have time to get a couple of rounds in before we have to put our golf clubs up for the season. And if you're an avid golfer, then you need to check out the sponsor of this show here for the 2025 season, Caddy Splash. Caddy Splash has some super useful tools that anybody that golfs, whether you're a beginner or whether you're a pro, could use in their bag. Keep your brushes clean, keep your balls even cleaner. Caddy Splash is definitely able to help out with all of that. You know what they say, look good, play good. And if you're hitting the links with a set of golf clubs that look like they've been in your mom's attic for 15 years, you're definitely not going to be playing good, and you're not going to be getting the type of looks that you want. So head on over to caddysplash.com, use code word headliners for 15% off your entire order. Get your clubs cleaned up and stay looking fresh out on the course. All right, moving on to the nuclear section. These are the guys who I love their ceiling this week. And even though their floor might be a little bit lower as well, I'm willing to risk it because I think the chances of them getting to their ceiling are a lot better than the guys that we have listed in landmines. Once again though, not every single guy will be a start in this section. We are going to have some starts and we are going to have some sits. It really just depends on the risk you're willing to take to get the upside these guys offer. Michael Penix looked really good to end 2024, and it's a really small sample size, but I don't think this is the worst first game of the season for him to get out there and get things going as well. Tampa Bay should be throwing the football. Atlanta should be throwing the football. We could see quite a bit of points scored here in week one. Michael Penix just got that C on his chest, listed as a captain this season, and I definitely think he plays like one this week. Joe Flacco has a tremendous amount of upside going up against Cincinnati this week, and maybe he pulls his best Jameis Winston. He throws for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, but he throws 3 interceptions against Cincinnati as well. While I don't want to start Joe Flacco as my QB1 here in week one, that's why I have him listed as a sit. If you play in a 2 QB league or a super flex league, I wouldn't be against Joe Flacco if you're looking for a little bit of upside at that spot. Jordan Love going up against Detroit, absolutely could see Jordan Love having a really good game. Aiden Hutchinson is going to be in the backfield. This Detroit defense, as of right now, is healthy, and let's just keep our fingers crossed that that continues to happen. But they've got a lot of weapons. Jaden Reed, Matthew Golden, Tucker Kraft, running the ball with Josh Jacobs. It's going to be a tough test week one for the Detroit Lions, whose starters haven't been playing in the preseason. I could see Jordan Love taking advantage of that. Trevor Lawrence will be a start this week going up against Carolina, and if this game stays in a neutral game script or if Jacksonville trails, I like Trevor Lawrence's potential upside. But one thing that would concern me is Jacksonville running the football well, and if they do, continuing to do that throughout the game. Maybe Trevor Lawrence throws for 250, close to 300 yards, but maybe he doesn't find the end zone because they run the ball in. If that ends up happening, then you would see Trevor Lawrence with a much lower ceiling than what we would really like. So if you're looking for some high upside plays, even though I have Trevor Lawrence listed as a start, there might be some guys around him that could give you a little bit more upside based on game script alone. If Tua is healthy, we should take advantage of it. And right now, he absolutely is. And you could scroll the internet and find every negative comment that you could possibly think of about the Miami offense. Whether their coach is on the hot seat, Tua's washed up, Tyreek Hill is washed up, he's a cancer in the locker room, Jalen Waddle isn't that good anymore. Whatever it may be, you'll find it. But Tua's healthy right now, and they're going up against an Indianapolis defense that could be good, but they could still put up some points in week one. Drake May going up against Las Vegas, I like his potential this week. I also like him to run the football a little bit. As you recall, I mentioned it several times this offseason that he was the number 4 quarterback in rushing yards after he took over as the starter last season. So he's going to offer you some of that upside once again. Maybe he doesn't run as much this year because they don't want him getting hurt, but he has a lot of improved weapons around him, especially with Stephon Diggs. If he's close to 100% and going up against Las Vegas, it could end up being a solid day for Drake May. All right, the final section of our quarterback start and sit video is going to be the tough call section. These are going to be the guys that I've struggled with this week, that it definitely could go one way or another, but I may not be exactly feeling it, or there might be a reason why I'm still just right in the middle of these guys. So when you're watching this section, these are the ones that you're probably going to have the biggest questions about. And for the quarterback position, more than likely, we'll be sitting tough calls more times than not, just because for a majority of leagues, you're only starting 12 quarterbacks, maybe 14, maybe 16. For those shallow leagues, if you're starting 8 or 10, we're not really going to need to go this deep with guys. But for Superflex and 2 QB leagues, this is where we'll need to start paying more attention. Bryce Young is going to be the only quarterback in the tough call section that I have listed as a start this week. And I don't love his upside. That's why he's not listed in the nuclear section. But he's not a landmine either, because I'm not really starting him hoping for some high upside. If you're playing Bryce Young, it's probably as a QB2 in a super flex or in a 2 QB league. Jacksonville's defense was a mess last season, and maybe it's a little bit better this year. Bryce Young to me has a little bit of a safer floor this week, but I don't necessarily see this guy going for over 300 yards and multiple touchdowns either. Daniel Jones, his first regular season game is an Indianapolis Colt. And while he's got plenty of weapons around him, Daniel Jones, he's been that guy over the course of his career. He just doesn't offer a ton. He's going to have some really, really bad games. He's going to look awful at times. And I still think this is the same Daniel Jones that was with the New York Giants. I really don't think anything has changed. So in week 1, going up against Miami, who look to improve their defense over the offseason, I could see it being a tough day for Daniel Jones. I'm not really interested in trying to roll with that during the first week. Geno Smith going up against New England, another guy whose upside I don't really love. Mike Vrabel's going to have that defense ready to roll, and it could cause some issues for Geno Smith this week. And it really depends on where Jacoby Myers' head is at. If he's good and he's staying and he wants to remain with the team, then he could end up being just fine, and that's a much-needed weapon for Geno Smith. Obviously, he's going to be looking to Brock Bowers a lot, but having another veteran that you can rely on would mean a lot to his ceiling. I really want to start J.J. McCarthy. I do, but I'm using my head and not my heart here. I think J.J. McCarthy is going to be a fantastic pro. I think he has a ton of upside in this offense. But in week 1, going up against Chicago, I think we just need to give it time. I don't want us to set the ceiling too high for J.J. McCarthy. I would rather have him be a pleasant surprise. And I would not be shocked at all if Kevin O'Connell doesn't kind of keep J.J. McCarthy like reined in this week and do some high upside plays with him, some high percentage plays, for completions and really just getting a feel for the game and getting more comfortable and really building up everything that he needs to be successful. Once they do that over the next few weeks, we could see this offense open up more. Do I think Spencer Rattler is terrible? No, I don't. Do I think he's good enough to get Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara the ball? Yeah, I do. Do I think he's good enough to be in your lineup right now? No, absolutely not. Russell Wilson may have just a little bit left in the tank, but I think he's going to be looking over his shoulder all season long for Jackson Dart. And I think Jackson Dart was good enough that if Russell Wilson just is not getting the job done, he could end up being ripped out of the game at any point in time. I think they want to give Jackson Dart time. Going up against Washington in week 1, definitely a possibility to throw the ball quite a bit. I just don't know if Russell Wilson is going to be the guy that's going to put up high-end fantasy points, even in a high-scoring contest. And finally, for Aaron Rodgers, going up against his former team, the New York Jets, I know he's going to want to stick it to him, but let's be honest. Based on what we've seen from Aaron Rodgers over the last year, and based on what we've seen from Arthur Smith over the last year, and given the fact that the Jets secondary is probably going to be pretty good, should we really roll with him in week 1? I think we can find better options. That's why I'm going to list him as a sit. I just don't love his ceiling this week. At the end of our start and sit videos for tight ends, wide receivers, and running backs, you would see a segment based around our new confidence scoring system. This is a system that we developed over the last couple of years and mostly this offseason that really helps us find the floor of individual players and how much confidence we should have that if we put them in our lineup, we are going to get solid fantasy points where a majority of the time that we wouldn't be worried about trying to play someone else over them. However, when digging into it, we really didn't find a system that works for quarterbacks. there's only 32 of them. So they're not nearly as spread out. And you don't have to dive as deep each week to be able to try and find which quarterbacks you'll be starting. So after playing around with a few things and utilizing the same formulas that we did for the other players, just with different categories for quarterbacks, we determined that nothing was working to the point that we liked it. So we are not going to do a confidence score for quarterbacks this season. Again, there's just not nearly as many of them. And as far as categories go, there aren't as many categories that we would like to use that we feel like accurately gives us a model that's going to help you out. So really for quarterbacks, it's all about the analysis and it's all about determining which player just has the best opportunity every single week. Unless you have one of those studs, then we're just locking them in all the time. Headliner Nation, appreciate you tuning in for another Start and Sit show. Let me know down in the comments below what you're thinking about the new layout, and make sure you hype the video up, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Because it helps spread the word that the Fantasy Headliners are the go-to place on YouTube for fantasy football information. Peace out, Headliner Nation. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you all on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.